Hey, I'm Jesse. This is my oldest son, Austin. Let's have a devotion. We are in Ezekiel chapter 41. We're going to look at verses 5 through 15. Here's the text. When he measured the wall of the temple, it was 10.5 feet thick. The width of the side rooms all around the temple was 7 feet. The side rooms were arranged one above another in 3 stories of 30 rooms each. There were ledges on the wall of the temple all around to serve as supports for the side rooms so that the supports would not be in the temple wall itself. Okay, if that's hard to track, I had to read it twice myself. All right, what we're looking at is a wall that is 10.5 feet thick, but the width of the side rooms around the temple was 7 feet. And so we've got 3 stories of rooms. See that? 3 stories, 30 rooms each. That's a total of 90 rooms that surround this structure. And that's useful for storage of perhaps some of these holy items, right? That are from the Old Testament, right? They're no longer functional for the Old Testament intent, that was anticipatory for the Messiah. Now the Messiah has come again, and he's reigning from this temple. And so the sacrifices that are carried out in the temple are commemorative in nature of what Jesus did in his first coming as the sacrificial Lamb of God. They could also be used as studio apartments for, hipster worship leader musician types. I don't know. But it creates a broadening of the rooms as you go up. And verse 7 will kind of explain what I'm talking about. The side rooms surrounding the temple widened at each successive story, for the structure surrounding the temple went up by stages. This was the reason for the temple's broadness as it rose. And so one will go up from the lowest story to the highest story by means of the middle one. All right, so you've got 3 stories, and you access the top by way of the middle story, okay? And in our sermon, we'll talk more about this. But it's kind of cool that things get broader as it goes higher. It's an architectural cue, and it's interesting. And it's also kind of the polar opposite of an architectural theme that's been used since the Parthenon. And there's a replica of the Parthenon just outside the hospital in Midtown Nashville, where Autumn Grace was born. As a drummer for theme parks and stuff, I've seen this used in theme parks. It's called forced perspective, where a building gets narrower as you go toward the top. When Austin was little and Asher was a newborn, they let us into the expansion of Fantasyland in Orlando because, we just walked up and said the words magical moment. So keep that in your back pocket. And we got to go to the soft opening before the grand opening of that expansion. Inside, there's this little miniature castle from The Little Mermaid, and it kind of tapers to the top. The castle in Disneyland is one of the smallest Cinderella's castles, and it does the same thing, forced perspective. It tapers as you go to the top. But this thing does the opposite of the Parthenon. It does the opposite of Disney castles. It gets broader as it rises. And some of what's being described here is the side rooms of the temple widening at each successive story. See that in verse 7? Because the base was 10.5 feet thick. And so for structural reasons, the rooms actually get bigger as you go up. I saw that the temple had a raised platform surrounding it. This foundation for the side rooms was 10.5 feet high. The thickness of the outer wall of the side rooms was 8 3/4 feet. The free space between the side rooms of the temple and the outer chambers was 35 feet wide all around the temple. The side rooms opened into the free space, one entrance toward the north and another toward the south. The area of the free space was 8 3/4 feet wide all around. Now the building that faced the temple yard toward the west was 122.5 feet wide. The wall of the building was 8 3/4 feet thick on all sides, and the building's length was 157.5 feet. Then a man measured the temple. It was 175 feet long. So this building that faces the temple yard is 157.5 feet long, but then the temple itself is 175 feet long. So if you're losing track of things, and also if I'm reading them properly, which is possible that I'm not, you've got this outer wall, 3 stories tall, with 90 rooms total all the way around it. And then beginning from the western wall, wait, from your perspective, you've got the temple, and the temple itself is 175 feet long. Okay. Now it goes on to describe that yard that's around the temple. So you've got outer wall, temple inside, yard. In addition, the temple yard and the building, including its walls, were 175 feet long. The width of the front of the temple, along with the temple yard to the east, was 175 feet. Next, he measured the length of the building facing the temple yard to the west with its galleries on each side. It was 175 feet. And then this sort of remnant of verse 15 is half of a sentence we'll get to tomorrow. So verse 15 will be in both today's devotion and tomorrow's devotion. But this word galleries, there's a couple of takes on this. And on the one hand, it sort of just means like ledges. But Dr. John MacArthur believes that there's space for art here. Okay. And there's something to that. This passage is so inspiring. It's so incredibly cool. As a church planter, we're saving up for our own building. We'll never be able to afford anything like this unless there's a trillionaire out there who wants to give the Redemption Church a colossal gift. Please do. That, by the way, is what this is. Somebody asked me about all the knickknacks that we have around here. And like, yes, these coffee cups, unfortunately, are real and used coffee cups that I just keep forgetting to take in with me. This is a vial of some of the water from the baptistry at Heritage Baptist Church, where I was baptized at 6 years old, April 16th, 1991. That is a piccolo snare drum. That's a photo from my friend Ryan's wedding that I officiated in Nashville. And this is a bracelet, one of the bracelets that we gave out when we launched our building campaign called the Revival Project. Okay. And you'll notice that it thematically, like the orange and black and all that stuff, it matches our series in Nehemiah. So Nehemiah and Ezra, both iterations of the Revival Project. That was how we launched our building campaign. So it's kind of cool to look at the specs of Jesus's millennial temple while we're trying to purchase our own humble church building here. Like, wouldn't this be a cool church building? Like, with 90 rooms, we'd have place to fit a lot of worship leaders. So come on. But what I want to point out is that this is the temple, and it's not the eternal temple. Okay, this is not a part of the city of heaven. John in Revelation will say that there is no temple because there's no place you go to worship God specifically. God's just there. The dwelling of God is with men. No need for church buildings after this millennial temple serves its purpose. This is like the last church building ever needed. And it's the place where Christ dwells. As New Testament believers, this should hit everyone close to home, whether you're planning a church or not, because at the very center of all of this, though you have 90 rooms, 3 stories of rooms going all around, and you have palm trees everywhere, and you might even have beauty and decoration and things like that. At the center of it all is Jesus reigning. We as believers currently now are the New Testament temple. May Christ reign at the center of it all. That you have 90 other things going on and decoration and all that stuff. May Christ reign at the center of your heart. May these building specs convict, bless, inspire you. There's more to this than a blueprint. This is Christ's millennial temple. May you be a temple wherein Christ reigns at the center over everything else.